So Luka Doncic is perhaps even better than he was supposed to be. And it's safe to say at this point, he can be one of the best players in the league one day. What's pretty wild too is he's probably a few pounds overweight, not by normal people standards, but by NBA standards. And even so, he's able to beat defenders and be amazing in the pick and roll and see passing lanes that normal NBA dudes just do not see, and he's got all the guts to make plays in crunch time for the Mavericks, and he's just a hell of a player, and his jump shot has been way better than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be this early as well. And now the question is, how do you build the team around the guy? Okay. I don't want to talk too much about this season coming up. Maybe they'll make the playoffs, maybe they won't, whatever. But really, it's moving forward. What is the right team around Luka? Well, I think the first guy that intrigues me the most is Deandre Jordan. So, Deandre, I don't think he's been like the main reason why the Mavericks defense has been so good over the past 10 or 11 games. I think most of it has been that their bench has been amazing. But he's certainly been good on that end of the floor. I think his personal defensive rating is 107, which is good for 10th or 11th in the league. Sure, it's not elite, but it's pretty decent. And him with Rick Carlisle, I think, is a good combination to have you be a respectable defensive team. And of course, we know DeAndre is a very good rim roller, and now that he's making free throws, that makes his offensive value even higher. Could the Mavericks re-sign DeAndre after this season to maybe a 2-year deal, something like that, similar to what the Sixers have been doing with JJ Redick? Honestly, I wouldn't hate it. I mean, there have been rumors that DeAndre and his teammates hate each other, and if that's true, then okay, he's gone. But if that is just kind of not true at all, then yeah, I would be content with DeAndre sticking around this team because, of course, he can set screens for Luka and all that. Now, I wouldn't sign him to a super long-term deal because, he's 30 years old, so you assume that he and Luka are not really on the same career trajectory. But even so, DeAndre has remained athletic, and he also never gets hurt, so you would think he can age pretty gracefully. And given that his free throws are now up, that's always a bonus as well, so it's a thing. He's been pretty good. We got to give it to him. Next, I think, is Dennis Smith. So, I think Dennis Smith's got potential. It's just, now that Luka is this good, do you really want to go through the Dennis Smith growth process? I mean, you can. I don't think it's ridiculous to want to, because I think he can be a really good downhill player, and I think, while he's not the playmaker that Luka is, still can break down the defense, and I think he can make enough plays. All the reports with him and with Carlisle and everything is that Dennis works really hard, so you hope that in a couple seasons he's not like Monte Ellis pretty much, which is kind of like what some people believe he is, I guess. But at the same time, I could understand just going, you know what, let's just trade this dude for somebody who can put up some points and who can shoot right now and can just play off of Luka, right? Like, say if the Wizards were content with Dennis Smith and other stuff for, like, Bradley Beal. Not that this will actually happen. I doubt it would. But if that did happen and I was the Mavericks, I would probably do it. So if you can think of some other player in that realm of Beal who can play off the ball and put up some points and is, like, in their mid-20s and is not about to be a free agent, then, hey, maybe. I think it's worth talking about. Because that is one thing, like, for as good as Luka is, you are still going to need another big-time scorer next to him, right? And ideally, that guy can make threes. Now, there are some free agents coming up here soon, between Tobias Harris and Chris Middleton. Both of those guys, I think, would play off of Luka very well. Whether Dallas wants to commit all that money and all the years that it'll require to get one of those guys, I mean, who really knows? I mean, we have seen with the Pelicans what can happen if you rush too quickly to surround your star young dude with veteran players, is you can cap out at like a 45-win team. But I would hope that even if Dallas was looking to sign some free agents or whatever, the difference here is, one, Rick Carlisle's a great coach. Number two, you hopefully wouldn't trade too many of your picks. I mean, you already traded one for Luka, but it's clearly working, so it's fine. The other thing is, will the Mavericks just nail it with their draft picks? Because that's one of the underrated parts about the Pelicans is, like, you can say, oh, well, they went for Tyreek and Eric Gordon, or Gordon was already there, but they went for Tyreek and Omer Asik and all this. The other problem was, like, all their draft picks after Anthony Davis sucked. So if you still nail it there, you could be all right. Although Buddy Hield has ended up being pretty good, so we'll give him that one. Another interesting one is Harrison Barnes, who in a perfect world is a multi-position defender who can also make threes. In a not perfect world, he's a dude who is slightly disappointing defensively. Still solid, but you wish he was a little better. And he ISOs perhaps a little too much, and he's also, like, not that great at playing off the ball. To be fair, he's shooting 42% from three this year, so if this is the new Harrison Barnes, then maybe you're willing to keep him, but he's an interesting one. Could he be, like, the third guy on this team? I don't know, because, well, to put it bluntly, I have a hard time thinking that he's really that good. Which means you probably want him to be more of an off-ball dude, but if that's the case, who's focusing on defense and all that stuff and not ISOing so you can get Luka the ball more, or not even just ISOing, but like the weird post-ups that Barnes does, then, I mean, he's probably not worth as much as you're paying him, right? Like, imagine if you replaced him with Tobias Harris, who defensively has gotten better, and then offensively can do a lot more stuff than Harrison Barnes can, right? Like, he can actually go off the pick and roll and make something happen. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if Harrison Barnes could get moved. He's got 2 years left. We assume he accepts the player option. But I could also see them keeping him for probably not $25 million a year. Because, again, like, he can still be a 3-and-D guy. And a little bit more than that, like 3-and-D and also a solid like 14 to 16 points a game on a good team where he's not asked to shoot as often as he has had to for the Mavs the past couple of seasons. But again, if you have to lose Harrison Barnes, because, I mean, maybe it's not free agency this year, maybe it's free agency next year, maybe it's trading Barnes, whatever it is. If you have to get rid of him in order to get the guy who you would love next to Luka, whether that's like a big score or whatever, then I think you still do it. Dorian Finney-Smith has been quietly really good, and I would not be against the Mavericks re-signing him to a longer deal, maybe about like $7 or $8 million a year on like a 3 or 4 year deal, if you're confident that his 3-point shot is legit now. Because him with the starters is actually a hell of a lineup. And he's been way better than Wesley Matthews this season. So yeah, basically what I'm getting at is, to me, the ideal thing around Luka is a big man like Deandre Jordan, who is probably a little better defensively, but it's not like there's a whole bunch of those guys out there, so keeping DeAndre, not the worst thing in the world, but just don't commit too long to the guy. You do need a second big scorer next to Luka. And then besides that, it's a bunch of 3-and-D dudes, and, you know, maybe Harrison Barnes is in this team's future, maybe Dennis Smith is in this team's future. I wouldn't freak out if either one of them wasn't on the team in a couple years, and I do trust this front office, Mark Cuban, Rick Carlisle, all that, to make decisions that don't suck.